All right, welcome everyone. Just give me 1 second. All right, let's take that again. So welcome everyone. Hope you're having a great day so far, but considering the topic, you might not be, and that's definitely okay. We are here to have one of our nether lives for a Thrive Space. So how are you feeling today? And it's okay if you're not feeling really that up to it. It's a Tuesday morning, probably start of the week. It might not necessarily be off to the best of start. You might not necessarily feeling upbeat, and the last thing you want to do is listen to someone who's upbeat, and that's definitely okay. I've certainly been there and know what that's like. And it's just, I'm having a great life right now, but certainly it hasn't always been like this. And it was just last year where I was feeling down and just not really knowing what the future would bring. So it is a great day here in Vancouver. So I'm over in Vancouver at the moment, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm fortunate to be in a wonderful city for the summer, and just taking in from a gratitude perspective all the things that the city has to offer, including family and friends. So I haven't seen them in a couple of years. And so that's always great to do, is be around those that actually care. Because in the corporate world, what we find is that sometimes we feel all alone when going through things, and that can sort of build up even more the feelings of isolation and sort of having to deal with things alone. So as I mentioned, right now I'm having a great life. Stark contrast to how I felt at the beginning of last year. It was winter, and of course, it was the dark, rainy mornings that echoed how I felt. My boss had implied that I was simply being used, and I had exhausted all options to get to the next level that I could think of. I was facing a dead-end job, and after having poured countless hours into the pursuit of my career goals, I reached burnout. So that is what we're here to talk about, is the corporate burnout drivers, because they are real and you're not alone. I'm not alone either. It's more and more people are reporting burnout symptoms. So over 90% of the population, the working population, is reporting burnouts and sort of extreme stress situations. Over 70% are at least over 50 for all age groups, and closer to about 70% of Gen Z are reporting burnout symptoms. So it is real. You're not alone. You're in the majority if you're experiencing those symptoms now. But let's first just clarify, what is burnout? So burnout certainly relates to work. And if you aren't dealing with this at work, it's not necessarily called burnout, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you're still experiencing these things, and the strategies will still help you. So burnout is just a workplace term, but it's not to say or take away from anything else. So burnout, in order for it to be classified as burnout, all three criteria have to be present. So that's first, the overwhelming physical, emotional fatigue. You feel completely drained, lack of energy, and struggle to recover. So this was certainly me. I was lying on the couch, scrolling Instagram and YouTube, watching anything that was there. And oh, good heavens, my streaming history was not something I'm proud of. It was all fluff and nothing of substance. And even at night when I got to sleep, when I wake up in the morning, I was not feeling refreshed. I was not feeling energized. I felt like I was still tired. I had not recovered. If this is you, this is what it feels like. Struggling to get energy, especially at the end of the day, if you're exhausted, no energy to do anything else. this is absolutely for you today. So the next element here is feeling of negativity, detachment, or cynicism related to your work. You may isolate yourself from colleagues or view tasks with resentment. And this was me, which was surprising because I loved my job. And this can happen even when you love the work that you do. What would happen is I resented credit being taken for my work. I was sick of doing the admin tasks. Like I felt the weight of them, whereas before, like, it was, I saw the benefit of them. And so, yeah, it was just all this negativity that you have towards your work. And the third is a decline in productivity or performance. So you may feel a lack of accomplishment, doubt in your skills, and struggle to achieve the desired results. So I certainly felt this way last year, and what I didn't necessarily appreciate fully, I did recognize it, but not necessarily fully appreciate the impact, was all of this in terms of the energy, the negativity, and the lack of success really impacts how you show up. And then it almost compounds the issue and sends you into a spiral. So that certainly happened to me, and it can happen to anyone really. So I was exhausted, disconnected, and feeling unsuccessful. So there are 3 pillars of burnout, and this is a different way of looking at it, but it certainly helps. So we've got the feeders, which is the fuel. So what's fueling the fire, right? The kindling, the logs, things like that. Well, in this case, is the fuel for the engine. So every time you go to the petrol station, it might not necessarily be the greatest thing in this context, but you're fueling the fire, and that fire is burnout. So what are you putting into your system that is, like, fueling that fire? Then you've got the root causes, which is the engine. So you've got to maintain the engine and yourself in order to avoid burnout. And then the third element there is the symptoms of smoke. So something's wrong when you see the smoke. And that's when we start to do things rather than recognizing the feeders before they, I suppose, create the fire within the engine and you get the black smoke. So certainly something to avoid, a different sort of metaphor with regards to viewing burnout. But you can sort of see where I'm getting at there. There's the symptoms, there's the feeders, and then what actually drives the burnout. So corporate burnout is driven from 2 sources. The first is the primary one, universally accepted driver, and that's chronic stress. It's widely recognized as a source of burnout. Even organizations such as the World Health Organization have stress as part of their definition of burnout. So they define burnout as a symptom resulting from chronic stress, workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And that seems to indicate that it's no personal flaw, but it's not, because as I mentioned, it's a systematic issue. You wouldn't have the majority of the population suffering from burnout, suffering from extreme stress if it's a personal flaw. It's actually a system issue, but we're going to talk about what we can do about it. So the second driver is the hidden source, the one that no one wants to talk about. So let's talk first about the chronic stress one, the one everyone recognizes. Let's understand the feeders, the fuel. Where does your stress come from? The common feeders include things like the chronic overload, excessive work hours, the high workloads, constant busyness, working on holidays, never getting time to actually switch off, the understaffed projects, and the general lack of support, the I'll just get it done attitude, and the time pressure and unrealistic timeline and lack of control. These are all something that I experienced. The unrealistic timelines and deadlines, you feel like you have to take it on yourself, that you have to do all these extra things just to meet that deadline. And the understaffed projects, well, just get it done. Well, it just adds to the unrealistic workloads. And if you try to please everyone, you just end up burning out. So we're going to talk about it. The second element is the pressure to be permanently available. So I've always took my laptop on holidays everywhere I went, so I was accessible. And that's the always on culture. Not getting a chance for your mind to switch off is troublesome. So it's like, we do need a break away from the technology that's pinging us and reminding us of work. The third element is our role or decision ambiguity, the unclear expectations. So what feeders have you been experiencing the most? Which ones speak to you? The ones that have been driving your exhaustion, your frustration, your resentment. Which ones are most important to you right now? And let's also look at the symptoms, of course, the smoke, the black smoke. So what does stress look like for you? Because it can depend on the person and the situation, the day even, and it can evolve and build. So it certainly did for me. It depended on the situation, it depended on the day, and it depended, whether I was early in my career or later in my career, I did evolve. So the physical symptoms can include persistent fatigue, muscle tension. So do you feel tense in your shoulders, in your back, in your neck? You can also have cognitive symptoms such as difficulty concentrating, so your lack of focus, your memory lapses, not trying to recall the key things that you've already learned. I certainly had this last year, where it was simple things that I knew them, but I just couldn't recall them. There were things that should be on the tip of my tongue normally in meetings, and yet I just couldn't recall it. I'd have to pause and think about things, or just move on from that piece and write it down and come back, because I just couldn't remember the thing I want to say, in terms of the technical. And so that's certainly a challenge. And then the third element is, of course, emotional. So you can be irritable, you can have low motivation, certainly other symptoms as well in terms of emotional. How does it show up for you? How does this sort of stress really show up when you're under high stress? What do your emotions say? What do your behaviors say? So behavioral ones can be procrastination. So avoiding the hardest task. Instead, you're doing the quick wins, trying to build up your esteem, your motivation, your momentum, but you're avoiding that one that's looming over you, and you constantly think about it. You can have increased mistakes. So when the pressure's on, you're stressed, you can increase your mistakes, and that is proven by studies. So do these sound familiar? Hopefully at least a few do, but hopefully just not too much, and it is controllable. So there are many more, and these are just a few. So at Thrive Space, we're not just about identifying the problem. We are about sharing the solutions. And so what can we do about chronic stress? So let's break it down first into the coping mechanisms. So coping mechanisms reduce the symptoms. They address the smoke, the in the moment smoke. The second one is the sustainable solutions. They reduce the feeders. So that's the fuel that's going into the engine. What's fueling the fire, that kindling. And then the third is the transformational habits. They reduce the root causes, right? So they are the maintenance of the engine. So if you've got a healthy engine, you're not likely to see the black smoke, right? So if you're regularly changing the oil, you're not necessarily going to see that black smoke. So first, coping mechanisms. These are the short-term tactical responses that help someone regulate their nervous system in the right now. So they're in-moment relief. They don't solve burnout. They simply reduce the acute activation. So when stress hits, we may need in-the-moment relief. Ability to ground us so that we're making clear decisions and act in a way that best serves us. A lot of the guidance out there focuses on this part only. A few examples can include grounding exercises, like the 5 sensory reset, a splash of cold water, It typically works for me. Not keen on those cold showers, but the splash of cold water, yes. The second one is breath work. So, such as box breathing. You'd have heard, like, there's many different breathing techniques. The third is micro breaks, often with movement, like a walk. Another one, fourth, is name it to tame it techniques. This is big in psychology. And the fifth is temporary boundary setting. So it pushes the problem to later on. I'll get back to you tomorrow. So that is a temporary for the moment, but it doesn't solve the problem. So have you tried any of these? And what's worked, what hasn't? It's a matter of having a toolbox, as it can depend on the day, on the situation, as to what actually works for you. Coping mechanisms calm the symptoms, not the system. They help you survive the moment. They help you survive the moment, not change the pattern. These are essential, but not sufficient by themselves. So let's talk about the second element. Sustainable solutions. Sustainable solutions are medium-term changes that reduce the feeders of chronic stress. They reduce the inputs that activate the chronic stress. So this is building a skill set to reduce the stress symptoms on a continuous basic level. Can I share this with you? These are part of simple programs that you might have elsewhere or have heard of, but I'm bringing them all together for you. So a few examples include workload management. This is reinforcing time boundaries, such as I have a full plate today, but I can do this tomorrow. Or break the work into smaller, predictable units, just focusing on the next step. And reinforcing workload boundaries, such as what should I deprioritize to take this on? Another one is clarifying expectations and priorities. So in an email, this is what I understood from our discussion as to the expectations and priorities. That confirmation gives you the clarity. I've had certain emails where they've come back and said, actually, I want you to prioritize this one over that one. Or actually, can you make sure that this other thing is done first? So that clarity up front helps reduce not only, gives you a confirmation and an assurance, but it also reduces the workload later on. So it has a huge impact on workload if you get that clarity. A simple thing. The third is boundary setting. So around digital interruptions or general interruptions. So for digital, checking emails only at certain times of the day. Focus blocks and no Slack or Teams after a certain time. So do you see the power in this? We go into more detail in this in our Clarity Under Pressure course. Sustainable solutions reduce the fuel that keeps the chronic stress burning. This is where most programs stop and why burnout keeps returning. So if you don't want to be caught in the cycle of the workload, the always on culture, things like that, you need more than just the sustainable solutions. You need transformational habits. And that's the third element of our solution. So identity level change. This is how we have to think about the solution, how we tackle burnout. You've got the coping mechanisms for in the moment. You've got the sustainable solutions for medium-term relief. And then you've got the transformational habits to make sure it doesn't happen again, to break the cycle. These are the long-term internal shifts that change how you relate to stress, pressure, and your nervous system. This is where burnout prevention becomes self-sustaining. You rewire patterns that make you vulnerable to chronic stress. Do you want me to share some of these with you? So some examples include the identity-based boundaries. So, for example, I don't work past 6 p.m. A boundary becomes part of your identity, not a rule, not a rule that you negotiate every day. You don't justify it, defend it, or apologize for it. It's just who you are. So the first step here is to create an identity statement and follow through each day. The second is self-trust and assertiveness. Believing your internal signals are valid and acting on them. Typically, as high achievers, I pushed past my body signals. And that trained me to not believe that they were real. So follow through, saying, I can't take this on right now, and asking for clarity instead of guessing, making decisions without over-consulting. The first step, say one small assertive sentence this week, or question. For instance, what is the priority here? Or, I need more time to do this well. Have you ever done something just to keep the peace, or because it's what someone else wanted? The third example is reducing the people pleasing, shifting from approval seeking to self-respect. You stop over-explaining. You stop saying yes automatically. You tolerate small moments of discomfort. So the first step here is to use a pause phrase. Let me check my capacity and get back to you. This interrupts the automatic yes. In our Clarity Under Pressure course, we emphasize decisions as they are the fork in the road. So important. Do you know when to know the secret behind reducing stress? It's the fourth one. It's the fourth example I'm going to give you, which is value-based decision-making. Choosing actions based on values, not fear, not pressure, not habit. You prioritize what matters, not what screams the loudest. You stop chasing urgency. You make decisions that are aligned to who you want to be. So the first step, pick one value. It's either health, family, growth, integrity, whatever you choose. What's important to you? Make one decision today that aligns with it. And the last example I'm going to give you about transformational habits is certainly the habit systems that prevent overload. So creating routines that make burnout unlikely. You plan your capacity for the week. You schedule recovery like meetings. So the first step here is to implement one anti-overload habit. No meetings at certain times. A shutdown wrench rule, for instance. Is this something that you can try this week? This is what our Clarity Under Pressure Accelerator program helps with. The AI simulations refine and embed new ways of approaching things that work for you. What step can you take today towards a fantastic stress-reducing habit? Transformational habits change your operating system. They prevent burnout by rewiring the patterns that create it. This is where the AI simulation is uniquely positioned to address it. So, what can you do differently today? Whether it's from a coping mechanism standpoint, building that toolbox, or sustainable solutions such as, just reducing those feeders, and transformational habits, addressing the actual root causes on a long-term basis. So coping mechanisms offer in-the-moment relief. Examples include the grounding methods, the breath work, the micro breaks. So your first step here is build that toolbox, as it can depend on the day and the situation. Second is sustainability equals stability. So you've got that workload management by boundary setting and gain clarity. Protect your focus time. Eliminate unnecessary noise. Check out our school community for free guidance on how to shrink those problems. And also our Clarity Under Pressure for phrases for upholding boundaries. The third is transformational, because this is your resilience. This helps you avoid burnout on a long-term basis. Break the pattern, break the cycle. We spoke about 5 key things, 5 examples of what transformational habits look like for stress. First is the identity-based boundaries, where your first step can be to create an identity statement and follow through with it each day. Second is self-trust and assertiveness. Your first step can be one to say just small assertive sentence this week. The third is reducing people pleasing. Your first step is a simple pause phrase. Fourth, value-based decision making. Your first step is just to pick one value. Make one decision today that aligns with it. And the fifth, to wrap it up, is the habit systems that prevent overload. The first step is to implement one anti-overload habit. Considering what we've discussed today, what's one simple step that you can take away from today? For truly transformational experience, it takes practice of embedding it. And that's where our Clarity Under Pressure course comes in giving you strategies and tools, finding you sustainable solutions. And with our accelerated upgrade, the practice through AI simulations in situations where our habits get tested the most. For example, those conflicting priority situations where everything's coming at you and everything's urgent. Can you believe this? A tool to help us practice to ease those high stress triggering situations. You see the power in this? With practice, it becomes easier, less stressful. You become bigger than the problem itself. The increased confidence in yourself that you can handle it. So just like those school exams that seemed so significant at the time, but now seem quite small compared to what you're facing in the everyday, stress triggers are on the rise. About 90% of us are experiencing extreme stress. Stress impacts our health, our relationships, and our ability to reach our goals. So don't wait until you're sick to prioritize your health. Don't wait until you're handed to appreciate the people in your life. Don't be too busy with busy work such that you're actually going to miss what's actually going to make a difference in your life. Don't let those opportunities pass you by. With the 80-20 rule, remember that only 20% of the activities are value add in your life. This is your chance to prioritize yourself first. Who do you want to become in this lifetime? If you only have 100 years, how much more do you want to spend distracted, away from building your vision? You think that's all? Of course not. Because we like to over-deliver and we're here to help. So do you know what the second root cause of burnout is? You might have a guess, but we won't leave you thinking and guessing for long. We've got an upcoming session this Thursday, the 16th of July, where we unveil the second driver. So tune in later this week. It's the one that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to admit, but it certainly is important to address. So that is why we're addressing it this week. And so please do join us this Thursday. Definitely take action today. There were some key first steps that you can take to help reduce burnout. You can also join our school community for more free guidance on how to take these sorts of steps. So we are here for you. We've got newsletters each week that also share tips and insights, practical strategies that you can actually apply in, the daily, corporate life. It's not just the theory, it's actual real examples from lived experience. And that's where we are the differentiator. We have been there. We've been in these circumstances where we're working 15+ hour days. We have been there where, we've been in those meetings and you don't know why you're actually in those meetings. And you're we've been there where there's so many emails coming at you, everything urgent, and you don't know what to prioritize. You're sitting there just overwhelmed with so much stimulation and so much chaos. So we've also been there with regards to toxicity. So we know what it's like when you're trying to uphold boundaries and they're not being respected. So certainly we do know that. We've been there, we've lived through it, and we've seen the other side. So don't give up hope. There is hope. Tune in later this week to find out more. Thank you for joining this one. Really, truly, just remember, control your destiny or someone else will. The choice is yours. So I love that quote. It's about taking action. It's like, situations, life presents us with situations that don't always go our way. But we can dwell in them or we can choose to action. It's how we respond that actually counts. We may fail, we may fall, but it's a matter of getting back up and walking forward, taking that first step forward. And that's what you can do today with the what we've talked about here today. So thank you for joining and look forward to seeing you at our next live stream. Have a great day. Bye.